All right, and now for the second last speaker on track 2 for today. Our incredible pleasure to present you Arron Finnon, talking about UPnP. Yay!
Hey! Thank you very much. It's obviously a great honor to be speaking at Bsides London. Fortunate enough to speak at the first one, even more fortunate enough to speak at the second one. Now, I'm going to ask for a little bit of audience participation before we start. There is a reason. Anyone that follows me on Twitter, Mini Finux wants a photograph looking at you guys, right? This is what she wants for my trip to London. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you all to smile and stick your thumb up and say Bsides London. Any of you that don't do it, I'm going to name and shame you in front of everyone, okay? No, you just say, hey, Bsides London. Stop overthinking it. Right? Are you wanting to get a photograph looking up as well? Yeah. Cool. All the awesome photographs you're going to see later on today, make sure to thank Wibble here.
They'll be on the website. They'll be linked.
Don't rate all of his bandwidth, by the way. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get 1, 2, 3. I want you all to go Bsides, and yay, stick your thumb up. Mini Finux will love it. 1, 2, 3. Bsides. Thank you very much, people. I will let you know how Mini Finux thinks of it. Knowing her, it'll probably be a number of different solutions. Oh, you mean a camera? Yeah. It's one of these old inventions that we used to have before phones. Okay, right, let's get on with it, because I'm 5 minutes late already. And anyone that knows me knows that's never a good sign. So, my name's Arron Finnon. Some of you know me as Finux. You guys voted for this talk, so you get what you're given. I'm going to be talking to you today about UPnP, the Useful Plug and Pawn Protocol. And that's quite true, to be honest with you. It's massively true. This is a talk loosely based on a talk that I gave in Bsides Vienna. And anyone who follows me on Twitter knows that I have an affinity for Vienna from that trip. So it's awesome that I get to speak about UPnP here. A quick little disclaimer. Much like Gavin, I swear like a trooper. If you don't like it, fuck off. If you do anything with UPnP that you're not supposed to be doing, you could go to jail. That's the disclaimer over with, okay? Do expect some laughs. You'll not understand why the UPnP developers did what they did, but do expect to laugh a little bit. And I will rant. Anyone knows me knows that I rant. So, today's outcome, what I'm hoping that you will walk away with, is that UPnP is inherently insecure. That's pretty much my talk done with. Thanks very much, goodbye. But no, seriously, underlying how it works is just bad voodoo, and you should be aware of what it's up to, because knowledge is the only way we can defend. UPnP is hard to mitigate. You know that shit that you all turn off your routers every time I speak to hackers? Oh yeah, I just disable it. But you don't turn it off Skype, you don't turn it off other applications. You know, it's there, it does traffic on the network. You can enumerate devices with UPnP. It's really cool like that. And I would be hoping that my slide, UPnP, and how you can order it, how you can hack it. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple of quick tools and some thought processes that you can go through to make UPnP rock. Awesome. So, what is UPnP? That's that shit that you guys all disable by default. You know that stuff. But it has been described as a protocol that allows devices on a network to communicate with each other seamlessly. Okay? It's kind of like an important word today. Or, is Mr. Hughes in the audience today? Lee Hughes? Great quote from who was there in Vienna last time. It's like a dynamic firewall protocol. That's pretty damn correct. UPnP ultimately is a NAT traversal sort of tool. So all you hackers, this is why UPnP is fun. I'm having slide issues. Sorry. So seamless interconnectivity is another fancy way of linking shit together. Cool. Why wouldn't we want that? That would be absolutely awesome. And UPnP is the next progression of, remember that lovely thing that we had, plug and play with Windows? Yay, awesome. Well, some smart ass in Microsoft thought it would be a good idea to make that, that sort of technology available on the network, which, of course, would be cool. But really, here's the first gotcha straight away. Seamlessly is another word for saying no validation whatsoever at all. So the fact that your Skype client can speak to your router, the fact that it exists on the network, that's the validation done. They really fixed authentication in UPnP by just not implementing any. And that's how it works. It's awesome. There's a lot that's happened in the past year, hence the revisited side of my talk. But yeah, for UPnP commands to be issued on the network, you just need to be on the network. That's it. That's your validation. How awesome is that? So it's a trusting protocol. And it is the most trusting protocol. It's the most polite protocol that I've ever come across, because it doesn't know how to say no. It only knows how to say yes. But ultimately, because you're on a network, that obviously means that that's what you want. You want your Skype client to be able to commit changes to your router. That's obviously what you want. It's a trusting protocol. And the big issue is that it has a lack of any authentication. The fact that you have an IP address, in most cases, the fact that you have an IP address is all that is needed. Kind of scary, very scary. And there are so many implementations of UPnP. I am hoping in the next slide that you all see something that you use to give you a rough idea. This is not a definitive list. This is 2 minutes of me scratching my head, thinking of a couple of applications or programs or hardware that you deal with. PS3s massively use it, Xbox uses it, iPhones use it, Skype. Skype's probably to where it is now because it was an early adopter of UPnP. Skype just works. No, it does a lot of traffic on the network, speaks to the router quite a lot, and does lots of awesome stuff behind the scenes. Wi-Fi access points, I'm sure you all see something on here that touches your life in some way, shape, or form. And this is what I mean. You can't just turn it off the router. That's just one device out of your network that is not using UPnP. That's all. The story about how I got to find out about UPnP is quite an interesting one. So for a local user group, I said that I would do a talk on passively monitoring wireless networks. And at the time, I was very fortunate or unfortunate enough to have neighbors with unsecured wireless networks. The golden thing that you never see anymore. But what I did notice very, very quickly was my neighbors owned iPhones, because I had all of these SSDP packets floating about my network, and basically went, WTF, bro, what's going on? 5 minutes of looking about, I discovered that what happens is an iPhone announces itself via UPnP on the network. I'm here. If anyone needs me, this is my resources. This is what I can do. Woohoo. So, bearing in mind, monitoring without an IP address on that network, I was able, using UPnP, to tell you that iPhones were on that network. I was in the middle of doing a talk, so I had to leave it for a little while and come back again. And when I did, my first initial thoughts were, UPnP would be really good for enumeration. No two ways about it. Boy, was I wrong. That's just the beginning. So how does it work? This is the techie bit. I don't want to do an overly techie talk, because I know you guys are not technical at all. But it's a 6-step process. UPnP can work where there is no DHCP server. It can deal with addressing with itself with different devices. Awesome. So basically, like a multicast broadcast happens in this SSDP packet. Everyone goes, yay, I'm UPnP enabled. This is where you can find me. This is what I can do, blah, 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 blah. Discovery, description. This is an XML schema that you can download. It's required that you're able to download it. This deals with all what it is, what it's capable of doing, how you go about doing it, blah, 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 blah. And of course, this is the bit we all love, because we like to control shit. And that's the bit that we look at. So, a real kind of breakdown of how it works: discovery, description, discovery. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you control UPnP. Very, very simple. It's a HTTP sort of base. You can use SOAP requests. The home hubs that use this stuff all are like SOP for this stuff, but there is a lot of different things that you can do. Big issue straight away. None of this is encrypted. This is all happening in the plane. There is nothing, no certificate swap going on, no SSL, none of this. So you can sit on the network, monitor the network, and see communication happen and go, oh, that's Skype talking to the router. Oh, that's a media server turning on and turning off. Yay. Very cool. And these are basically delivered by XML. And I did toy with the idea of taking screenshots of the XML that sends all the data that you can retrieve. But that's just not going to work on this. What I'm going to quickly do, if no one minds, is just show you a couple of examples of what a router will give you just because you have an IP address, if it ever opens. Here we go. So as you can see, this is with one request, I was able to tell that I'm on a BT home hub. I know what it's capable of doing. I know its firmware versions. The only reason that I get this is because I have an IP address. That's it. That's my only validation. And it tells me everything that it's capable of. Bearing in mind, UPnP, very polite protocol. Excuse me, what do you do, bro? I do this. Thank you. And that's pretty much how that works. And I'm going to show you another one. So this is with BT. I know that there's some BT people in the audience. Don't worry, you're not going to get it too tight tonight. That will be for another day. Sorry. I like BT. They keep me busy. They keep themselves quite busy as well. And here is another one. I think this is a Virgin router. Netgear, sorry. And like I say, literally, just by asking the device with a multicast request will tell me that this is here, and then I can download it, and that this is all available. So before we even start, as a hacker, you haven't had to do very much to be able to tell your IP range of your router, what firmware versions it's running. You know, it's all very quick. Do you know what I think? It's just one UPnP command. Oh. The other great thing with UPnP, if you are on a UPnP network, there's Finix's pro tip of the day, right? If you're on a UPnP network with an IGD, an internet gateway device, a router, you don't need to send a packet out to find out what your IP address is, okay? You can ask the router via UPnP, and it will say, sure, I'm 92.168, blah, 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 blah. It will just tell you. It will also tell you, how many packets it's sent, how many lists it's got in its firewall. It gives you a lot of information. And this device, this is normally on most home and small, medium enterprise networks. So you can have some fun with it, that's for sure. So that's the show and tell with that bit done. I've got some other stuff to show in a wee minute. That's what I keep on doing. Sorry. Give us a second. I love LibreOffice, by the way. They did such an awesome job. Anyway, and this is what a router will give you. But under the specifications, all UPnP-enabled devices will have an XML schema that tells you what it does. So your media server, your PS3, your Xbox will tell you who it is, what it does, its IP address, and any of the functions that it can do. Nice. Thank you very much. And the reason I get that? Because I have an IP address. That's it. But how it works practically, really, is a conversation. Pretty much like this. And basically, your Skype will speak to the router. It will ask it to open up a port and tunnel the traffic to it. And it will say, sure, I'm at this IP address. And that's pretty much a UPnP communication happening with Skype, opening up ports on your firewall from the green side to the red side, and bidirectional traffic. Nice. But we need to ask a question. Because here's a second gotcha. The IP address that we give for that port mapping is explicitly trusted in most cases now so when we say I'm Skype at 192.168.1.100, that's Skype telling the router that, and the router goes, why would you lie? Of course you are. So this is an old hack, very effective still, and quite fun, because it shows you there's nothing wrong. There's nothing we can do to secure against this. BT have tried, and I will talk about BT's extended security in UPnP, because it is pretty cool. It is the equivalent of cock blocking in my professional, and I will show you why. But so dynamic port mapping is what happens when we get an application that asks for some firewall rule to be added. So the question is, this is what it looks like in the table. And it makes a lot of sense. We've got this port open externally. Skype's used it, and it's TCP. We can open up UDP, all of that good stuff. Bearing in mind, we supply the IP address. So the question is, interestingly enough, if you trust us to give you the correct information, what happens if I abuse that? Because I supply the IP address. Can anyone tell me, you should be able to work this out, otherwise I'm going, exactly what I've done here? Bingo. And you know why? Because I had an IP address on the network. Sorry, I'm covering up my microphone. Yeah. You know what the beautiful thing with this is? You know these home control panels, you tick the box that says, make web control panel accessible from the outside. That's still ticked to disable. Yet, when we connect, the traffic forwards, and we are back in the inside. 2 commands to the UPnP. I can do that, and then I can get your external IP address with another UPnP command. And I can come back later on and maybe run Hydra against your web control panel if you've changed your default username and password. Because we know so many people change it on a regular basis. I noticed recently, Virgin Media have their new home hubs, or whatever they're called. These awesome bells and whistles, with UPnP enabled by default, damn near impossible to turn off, susceptible to WPS. It's a great bit of kit. Their default password now, because they're smart, is change me. That's the new password. I wonder how many people change that password. I've certainly not seen it yet. So this is interesting. Remember, I talked about this last year, and it's pretty interesting. But that's just the beginning. Because anything's possible, as we said in Vienna, anything's possible with the protocol that likes to say yes. And that's ultimately what UPnP wants to do. It wants to make your life easier. It wants to give you, it just works. So we can use stuff like dynamic pinpoint mapping, which is very interesting. So the UPnP gives us the enable to, certainly in a router context, we could ultimately open up port 53 on the green side to port 53 on the red side and tunnel that to a specific IP address. And that's a dynamic port map, fully legitimate, fully acceptable. There's nothing hinky, there's no dirty hack going on there. This is exactly how it was written. And it has a long history since 1999. And it's a long history of pluses and minuses. It is very cool. UPnP is governed by the UPnP Forum, aka Microsoft. And surprisingly, who would have seen a network implementation of plug and play? Who would have thought that Microsoft would have its fingers on the strings on that one? So yeah, UPnP Forum was set up by Microsoft, but there was a huge amount of people that use that UPnP Forum. There's so many implementers now. Skype got to where it was, in my humble opinion, by using Skype before anyone else, which is why SIP is on its ass, because it just works. And a lot of your users want it just to work. They don't care that you have a dynamic firewall protocol that can open shit on your network. They don't care. It's just us that care. They care when we do hinky shit for them, but up until then, It's not cool. But this is kind of like the timeline. So 1999 comes out, 2001, we see a DOS attack against the UPnP stack in Windows. There are so many great potential hacks in Windows. It's unbelievable with this stuff. We see multiple buffer overflows in the same year. Stickler discusses UPnP information disclosure. Now, this is a very valid point, but the truth of it is it's specifically designed to tell you what it does. You're not doing anything wrong. So you might get some data. You know, there might be some security implementations that you know, you're not doing anything wrong. So yeah, it will tell you that, you know, it will give you information. Hemel starts the www.upn-hacks forum. If you are into UPnP hacking, that's the de facto website. Take that down, go and look at what this guy's done. He's done some absolutely awesome stuff that will scare you shitless. So go and visit that site, no doubt about it. 2008, we all know GNU Citizen, don't we, I hope? They totally pwned this shit out of BT, sorry boys. They found, so in UPnP, because their implementers can choose what's there, BT thought what would be a really good idea was to be able to have your DNS servers updated via UPnP. Because what you really want is your media server to be able to communicate with your BT home hub and say, yeah, no, I'd like to change it to a Russian DNS server. Thanks very much. Cheers, guys. So they found some funky XSS, some Flash-based thing, and basically they were able to update BT Home Hub 2's DNS servers. Cool. Kind of played on it a little bit. I'm unsure. They did very good. I thought they were quite responsible in how they showed the POC. I'm not sure BT would agree, but it could have been a lot worse. And this is a nice little hack, but it'll only work against BT. We could have. You imagine if we'd had that, where we'd have just made all the web control panels available on the outside and email out what's going on. That would have been pretty cool. So I get voted for Bsides London and I start chatting about it. Cool. And a lot of positive stuff came out of it, and we said, it's really good because you can't inject UPnP commands remotely. So, you know, at least you have to pivot onto the network. I'd only said that for about 6 months before Garcia found out that you could inject UPnP remotely. At that point, I was like, let's close up shop, we're done, it's over. Kaminsky, he did some UPnP shit that I still don't get my head around fully. But the problem is it's connected to Bitcoin, and when you think you understand Bitcoin, you know that you don't, and you need to reread it again. I mean, I still don't get my head around it. There's some stuff related around there. And in 2012, you guys voted for it again. So let's get some meat on it. I mean, I've talked a lot of crap, and what I want to do is I want to show you some very, very, very simple things that we can do with nothing other than Ubuntu and what's available in its packet repository. Okay? So I'm not downloading anything. I'm just using an apt-get. That's all I'm doing. I wanted to do some demos, and then I realized that I would have to bring so much along with me. So this is an application called Router Controller. Okay. Can you see that all okay? This is just an application that I downloaded from Ubuntu, apt-get, you know, Synaptic Package Manager, whatever you want to use. Blah, 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 blah. So you can see that I'm connected to a BT Home Hub. So it tells me who it is. It tells me it's where the web control panel is. If you hit that button, surprise, surprise, the browser opens up in front of the web control panel. It's IP address, what traffic's on the network at the moment, how much it's sent. I don't know why UPnP would want to know that, but it's available. And this will give you a rough idea of what I meant by BT cock blocking. Is there an idea of extended UPnP validation? So to set in a port map, bearing in mind I have no credentials, I would have to log on to the router to do this in any other way. And as we see, I supply the IP address, which could have been very easily 1337 to 80, easy peasy. And there we go. And we could change that, like I say, that IP address could be changed to anything you want. This is just a demo. This is just what you can download in Ubuntu. We can remove stuff very easily as well. So, boom, goodbye. And literally, that is an apt-get in Ubuntu. And we completely control a router, able to put in dynamic firewall rules and all these good stuff. But, you know, we don't always like a GUI. Sometimes we like a command line because we are geeks after all, and it makes us feel like we're in hackers. So this is a demo of a tool called, it's a stack called Mini UPnP. Very easy to use. I'm not sure how well you guys can see it. I will make these videos available, I do promise. Just give me a nudge if I forget. So here, I just issue a command, UPnP-c-s. This will give me the data on this router. You can see the information that I'm getting back. I'm getting what my IP address is, where stuff is available from, how many packets have been sent. I can request the external IP address. That's a statically compiled binary, so you can move that about. It's very, very nice, easy to script. I'll show you that in a second. So along the lines, I'm going to enumerate Skype users, Skype on a home network. I'm hoping that it's this one. Could have been worse. I could have been doing this live, and you know it would have gone tits up. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to list all the UPnP dynamic port maps and grep for Skype. And what this is going to do, hopefully, is show me what Skype clients, where they are on the network, what they've got opened up. Very nice. Simple command. BT Home Hub 3 has recently introduced extended UPnP validation. I'm going to show you what that actually means. So you've heard me saying it's the equivalent of cock blocking. I'm sure the BT guys will agree with that, to be honest with you. It's, oops, typo. So let's have a look. Come on. Then you just hear the silence. So BT, basically, we said, well, you know, IP addresses shouldn't be, you know, last year we were talking about IP addresses shouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z, blah, 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 blah. So what BT did was register all the important ones via UPnP and point them to 0. And that's extended UPnP validation. As well as, in fairness, it seems with BT at the moment that you can no longer issue a dynamic port map for an IP address that you're not at. Okay, so on an extended BT Home Hub 3, that little port 80 to 1337 hack shouldn't work if extended UPnP is on. Although UPnP is very buggy, and I would just still test that to be absolutely sure. So I'm just setting up a simple port map over the command. So you can see how this would be scripted. And this is a statically compiled binary that you can just drop in lots of different places. And what I've done is I've done a dynamic port map on this external IP address to 1337, like that. And I'm not doing any hacking here. This is the important thing to remember. I'm not doing any hacking whatsoever at all. I am doing exactly what the protocols allowed me to do. So any of you hackers that really hate NAT traversal, please look at UPnP. It's specifically designed for NAT traversal, which I would have thought some of you guys would be very interested in. And it's very simple. You can see the port map here. Well, you could see the port map there. You could obviously change this to say Skype or whatever if you did want. And as simply, we can delete port mappings. It's an interesting attack, or maybe an interesting attack. We could probably jump into a router, script it, and pull out all its dynamic port mappings. You know, for stuff that's already established, we'll just rip that off. There's a potential DOS attack as well. That certainly in Linksys routers, they store all their dynamic port maps in non-volatile RAM, which means that if basically you turn that shit off, turn it back on again, they're still there. But it's a finite resource. So I've certainly been able to degrade the performance of a Linksys router by sticking in 120 fictional port maps. And the non-volatile RAM is occupied by basically BS. And there you go. You can get that in the Ubuntu repository as well. Very, very simple tool for you to use. Oh, I thought I'd finished that. I have now. So, I am sorry, BT guys. BT, UPnP, when Don Garcia was writing a tool, he said, and it was a great quote, he said, you know, the UPnP stack is very buggy. I crashed the router umpteen times with just buggy packets. He says, but what's the point of DOSing a router like that when you can do this? This is a beautiful command. All that BT are doing a lot. They do crazy stuff. So you can be just like me. So when I dumped the available commands in a BT Home Hub 3, you can see how surprised I was to find enable internet via UPnP. And I thought, surely not. That's not going to be what I think it is it? And it's a bit like a red button. You don't want to press it. You press it, and your network goes down. You go, oh. It really does do what I think it does. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to disable the BT Home Hub. Well, it's internet connection. Okay. So I'm, at the moment, doing a ping to security Bsides, so you can see that I've got an internet connection. Because otherwise, I would have had to have got a video of the light going off the hub. And that would have been kind of anti-climax, really, wouldn't it? So as you can see, this is just an application that I've downloaded in Ubuntu. Let's do a ping now. It's beautiful if you watch it. So you have this BT hub. It's got this nice blue light to tell you that, well, I'm on the internet. Woohoo! And it goes orange, and then it goes black. And you go, what the fuck? I can't connect to anything. And here we go. That's me trying to do a ping. Ticking away, ticking away, ticking away. I finally get bored in a minute or two. And surprisingly, this is not one of the only interesting UPnP variables in BT. Although, they are not alone in this. This is not the only router that has this feature via UPnP. Let's put this into context. Your Skype has the ability to turn off, to just disable the internet connection. Your PS3, your Xbox, your iPhone, your Android, all of those have the full authorization, they are fully valid to turn off the internet. Nice. Why would you want that? So you can see all I've done here is enable the internet. Give it a second, because we all know BT, ADSL, I've got to speak to the player, blah, blah, blah. Give me an IP address. Are you sure? Yes, please give me an IP address. Are you sure? Yeah, no, give me one. Eventually, I'll get an IP address. He says, it takes a little while. I do apologize. Speak amongst yourself, it'll be a couple of minutes. You know, it'll be my turn to talk when some packets start popping up at the bottom here. It's a great advertisement for how fast it takes you to get an IP address off BT, isn't it? But as I said before, they are, in my opinion, certainly leading the way in home routers with UPnP. I don't think that there is any doubt. And there we go, back alive again. That's just a tool that I got from the internet. Do you know, to do that any other way, I would have to log on to the web control panel. I would have to give it a username and password. I would have to go disconnect. Yes, I do use Unity, but only for the trolls. This is very, very... Where's Javid, by the way? Is he not here? Put that in for him. So yeah, it's, like I say, that's just 3 tools that are in the Ubuntu repository that give me control of your router. And as I say, up until recently, BT were victim to being able to do some interesting dynamic port maps. I understand that by default, which is very un-BT, by default, extended UPnP is turned on. So yeah, some of these dynamic port mapping juicy little hacks are a little bit harder to pull off nowadays. Although I'm not 100% convinced that without a little bit of web foo that you couldn't get around the circumvention of that. And worryingly enough, so you do a request from an IP address that isn't yours. So you want to do a dynamic port map from 80 to 1337 or whatever. What you get is a 501 error. Like, ooh, so you're doing some form of web authorization on something a little bit lower in the stack. So I'd be interested to see how that stands up. But what's really interesting is Garcia. This tool, I do not have a demo of, but I am going to make you all that excited that you're going to want to play with this, because this is brutal. Like, shit be bad, right? So Garcia does this lightning talk at DEF CON 19. And we've all been saying, well, you know, we'll have to get some sort of footprint on the network before we can do this, blah, 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 because it doesn't do any, you know, you can't inject UPnP commands remotely, blah, 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 blah. Dan Garcia went, well, hang about. UPnP hacks have been talking about something back in 2008. There's some potential here. And he went and spent some time looking at it. And what he discovered is, yes, via remote, from a different IP address, we can inject UPnP commands. So that little web control panel hack thing, we can inject that remotely. Nice. And we can get your IP address remotely. You know, just all that data is fully available to us. And what he discovered was that there was a number of vulnerable firmware that enabled UPnP to be connected remotely. And can we see some of the lovely people that are available there? Thompson's, Speed Touch, Linksys. Oh my God, that's pretty much the home market right there. Nice. So he has a tool called Umap. So what Umap does is, because you can't obviously use multicast traffic on the internet, it just ignores this discovery stage, guesstimates where the description file is, and carries on as usual. And what he discovered was, in one short scanning process, he discovered 600,000 vulnerable routers that were able to inject UPnP commands remotely. This is not a full scan of the internet. This is a small segment. Over 500,000. That's a lot. That's a big number. So he has a very awesome tool that, for shits and giggles, will set up a SOX proxy. So what you can do is get your vulnerable target, scan a nice range like the Dominican Republic, Russia, China, because we know all hacks originate from the Chinese, obviously, and go, oh, here's a vulnerable target. I'm going to now SOX proxy all of my traffic through here. And you get to pop up wherever you want. Nice little interface. It's very well written. Very, very, very cool. There are some YouTube videos of him using it. I do suggest you go and have a look, because it is very, very cool. So anyone that listens to the podcast, I don't want to monopolize your time too much. So in conclusion, it's not really a conclusion. This is basically the mild rant that I was telling you about. So UPnP, by default, is inherently insecure. There is no way to authenticate. There's no way to validate. You have to take the data that you have on the wire. That's the only thing that you can do. You can make some good guesses. You can make some bad guesses. But either way, you can only go with the data that you have. So why is it so insecure? Because it's not built with security in mind. This is not what we want. Okay? This is what the user wants. You know, it's almost Tron when it comes to UPnP, because they're fighting for the user, but it's, ladies and gentlemen, that's scary stuff. That some guy under an IP address on your network, if you do not, you can make alterations to your firewall, can enumerate your Skype, can see if you're using BitTorrent. I think you can see if he's able to detect if you're also using Bitcoins and stuff like that. But by its very nature, it's insecure, because it doesn't want the user to sit and speak. It wants to plug something into the network and it work, which means it has to trust everything that it hears. And that's There is no way around it. There is no way that you could put some form of validation into this. There is an argument that maybe UPnP should be at least done over SSL so that it's encrypted. And, you know, maybe that's possible. Maybe it isn't. I don't see how it isn't possible, you know. It's not going to validate anyone, but it's certainly going to make that sure that an eavesdropper on the line will have some difficulties. But that's it. It's just to make things difficult. That's all that's happening here. It will never, ever, ever be secure because of those things, right? This is security, and that's UPnP. Okay? It just... Why would you want to change DNS server settings via UPnP? Can anyone give me a legitimate reason for that, apart from we did it for the trolls? Do you know what I mean? I don't understand why. As we said earlier on, last year I got to say this talk and say, you know, what a great countermeasure would be is if you could only use dynamic IP addressing from the IP address that you're from. And then BT went, fucked my talk up by implementing that. But Virgin, the rest of them didn't, so it's cool. We've still got some time in this game. But they will pick up on this. But it's too late. We always say that, you know, when you design software, you should be starting with security in the mindset, blah, 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 blah. That shit just didn't happen. So now it's a case of some dude having to stick his finger in the dam and hope the whole rest of it doesn't go. And that's pretty much where we're at with this. Although, I may not like UPnP, I do love it. Because it saves me from actually having to log in my router and put any port maps. I don't have to set up firewalls now. I can just, like, via the terminal, pop. And yes, I keep UPnP enabled because if anyone does come on the network, I think it's important that we share our hacks. So I don't have any problems. I also have WPS as well, but apparently my neighbors are not into hacking as much as I am. But UPnP is, by default, the most insecure protocol that you can possibly think of. It commits changes, it does things, it's easy to spot, it's easy to watch, it's easy to spoof. Anything's possible with a protocol that likes to say yes. So it is a very, very naughty. So, in conclusion, it isn't about you buying me beer, but it should be. Turning off in the router is just the beginning, okay? We can write some funky IDS, IPS stuff, but we're not going to see that in Granny's house. That's not going to happen. It's not a one Granny solution. We can, you know, we can disable it everywhere, but we're going to break so much functionality. How many Xbox users admit it? How many of you in the audience? How easy, if you turn UPnP off your firewall, is it to make an Xbox work? Oh, awesome, because that's just what you want. I know firewall guys that cannot make that shit work, right? Okay, can you imagine how frustrating that must be if you're a firewall guy? So yeah, it's around everywhere. Can you imagine also telling your boss as well that, no, we can't use Skype anymore because we turned UPnP off? On a side note, just thinking out loud, did anyone see the awesome little Tor Skype spoofing thing? So you mask your traffic as though it's Skype. And it's your Tor traffic being masked to Skype. Because they all know there's no way the bosses are going to turn Skype off. Do you know what I mean? But I can't speak to my wife when I'm away. Yes, use the phone. Cheers. So, this would be the time that I would like to take some questions off you and get some thoughts. And if you do want to get in contact with me, I don't know why, you can email me. Feel free to email me. I'll feel free to ignore you. You can find me on Twitter. If you haven't listened to the podcast, it's too late for you now anyway. We are slightly insane, but we talk about this shit on a regular occasion. And yeah, come and find me in LinkedIn. Do send me a message and tell me that we spoke at something, because otherwise I'm going to think you're a recruiter or something. They've been, wow, it's really their business, LinkedIn, isn't it? Right, so questions.
Not really a question, but a fun bit of information for you. There's a particular quite popular brand of Linksys router. It's one of their 54G models, pretty much the one that everybody bought from PC World. When you do the defaults or the UPnP discovery request, you get that nice bit of XML back. Guess what it sends you back? The Wi-Fi password.
Anything's possible with a protocol that likes to say yes.
It's really quite fun.
Yeah.
I've also heard situations where it's also given back the login credentials for the admin panel for the router as well.
Okay, yeah. So one of the fun bits for with most of these implementations, certainly the ADSL versions, is they will give you the ADSL account username and password because that's what Skype really needs. You know what I mean? But yeah, there you go. Definitely. This is where the shit needs to be played with because there's a lot of funny stuff in there. Is there any other statements, questions, heckles? Is that Stephen Bonner awake? Get a good sleep.
I just wondered if you'd, I mean, you've talked a lot about UPnP in a home environment. I mean, of course, there'll be a lot of devices and things out in corporate environments who are using this, and perhaps some of the implications for perhaps IDSs internally.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I only need to say VoIP in this context. You know, there's a lot of UPnP. There's a lot of VoIP servers now that are bringing in UPnP. Okay. I mean, VoIP's always going to suck, but this is supposed to help. Well, how about this for an idea? How about we go and strip all the dynamic port maps out of your Soho router, and then for your VoIP server that doesn't work anymore, and then we knock on the door from BT and say, oh, we've just clicked the wire. Can we just check? You know, you've got an attack straight away, some reverse social engineering for the social engineers out there. And that's just something you could do for shits and giggles, never mind anything else. So there's also an interesting theory, although I haven't seen it played out, where, so is anyone ever, on the Windows, the network thing, if you've got UPnP devices on the network, it suddenly pops up a little UPnP icon of the device on the network. Well, there's two worrying things to think about here. Firstly, the data that says I am your iPhone on your network is supplied by you or the iPhone. The image that's being rendered is supplied by you, and that's being rendered on the XP box. So that little logo of the iPhone or whatever, you're sending it. Now here's another bite down on the pipe for this one. Nothing stops that request from being made on the red side. So we can request an external resource, an external JPEG, to be rendered by Windows XP. I'll leave you to think about how fun that might be. So yeah, there's a potential. They've been talking about this since 2008. I'm not sure if there is any out in the wild sort of examples of that. But yes, there is interesting stuff because Windows XP will render the image that you supply it. Pop, nice. So you can have some fun with that. Is there any more questions? Don't be scared.
Can we UPnP you?
Can you UPnP?
Emailing you.
Yeah. And I'll do, so the DOS attack that I was talking earlier on, the potential DOS attack, this is an example of UPnP at its best. So the reason that it works is we could occupy the non-volatile RAM. Okay? There's no error handling in this shit, right? So it doesn't tell you, whoa, bro, I can't take any more, I'm full up. It doesn't tell you that, it just keeps on taking it. Just, it's cool. So, yeah, you can UPnP me and I'll probably react a lot like the router. Yeah. Any more? Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you for coming to the talk, and you guys have been awesome. Cheers now.